Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Welcome, everyone, to our weekly Clear Mountain question and answer session. As we've been doing recently, I think we could start the session with a brief meditation together, and that prepares the ground well for um, any discussion and talk that comes afterwards. So close your eyes. Sit with dignity. Making sure to draw in the lower spine and stack the vertebrae. The head resting on top of the spine like a stone ball on top of a fountain. Just take a second to let awareness grow wide rather than narrow. Encompass the evening, the yard, the sounds around you. And within that, allow the breath to grow more prominent, but don't necessarily constrict awareness to the breath, but raise it up in the wide space of awareness and track it, centering at the nose, if that's where you feel it most prominently. Just relax into that for a time. Letting the breath grow slower, deeper. Relaxing into the exhale. Not beginning the inhale until your body naturally wants it. Try to keep a thin thread of breath continuous through the breaks between exhale and inhale and exhale. Unbroken awareness, sati. Be very sensitive to the sensations at the tip of the nose, the coolness in the nasal cavities. each moment of mindfulness drop, and as the drops run together, you get a stream, and that's samadhi. Now we're going to try a meditation that's essential to monastics and important on the path, but which can be a bit off putting. So have patience with me. It's a different form of working with the body than we've been doing these past weeks. It's called Asubha, seeing the unattractive, the non sexually attractive nature of the body, just seeing it as it is, truly. So think of the skin. First, just feel the skin as we have in previous weeks, on the face, the torso, the legs, the feet. And now begin to contemplate. This is an active meditation. So think of the skin. It's dirty. You have to wash it every day. And if you forget, even for one day, sometimes even for a few hours, what happens? Think of the oil that's constantly oozing from it, soaking into the clothes, the body, the skin oozing constantly liquid, sweat, oil. Think of what the body does to a new t shirt after a day or two in the sun, how it comes off sweat and oil stained, dirty. This is the body, its true nature. We have to wash it constantly to hide this fact. Think what happens to the skin when it gets old, how it wrinkles, sags. Consider the fact that it's dead. Everything you see on the surface of a body is dead. All the living cells in the skin are below the surface. If they were on the surface, it would be raw and unbelievably painful. So there's a layer of dead cells on top, and that's all you see is dead tissue. That's what skin is, at least the visible part. Hair is dead, like fingernails are dead tissue. Even the eyes, they seem alive because they're moist. They have water, but they're also, this is the only thing that makes them seem alive, really. Imagine taking the skin off, what the body looks like underneath. All right, come out of the meditation. Okay, so we're going to go into a practice that is very unpopular to teach in the West. It's much more fun and safe to speak about metta practice. However, this practice of Asubha, um, body contemplation, is enormously powerful. The first five meditation objects we're given as monastics when we ordain are five pieces of the body to think about: nails, teeth, skin, hair of the body, uh, hair of the head, before any other meditation objects. And when we look at these five khandhas, which is our theme for the month, for those of you who don't know, we've begun a Upasaka group for those who keep five precepts and meditate approximately daily. And if you're interested, just join our Discord and you can join there. But for that group, we're moving through the book Buddha Dhamma, one chapter a month. And this month's chapter is on the five khandhas, the focal points of identity, which we take as me, mine, and myself, which we attach to and cling to. The five aggregates, they're frequently called, which we feed off of. Ajahn Jayasara was once asked what the Buddhist word for experience is, and he said, experience is the five khandhas in Buddhism. That's our experience. And this is how we perceive the world, and yet we constantly try to cling and control these things, to find refuge in them and to identify with them. And because we're doing this, then when they change, which they inevitably do, our heart breaks with them. So the body is the first of these aggregates, form, rupa. And the Buddha said that just as one who encompasses the ocean with their awareness encompasses all streams and rivers that run into it, even so, one who develops mindfulness of the body, develops all wholesome states there are that partake of true knowledge. And there's an entire section of the Angutras, the numerical discourses, that praise this mindfulness of the body. And it's emphasized. There's an aspect of it which truly is developing a sort of grounded awareness in the body. And this is much safer to talk about. We speak about it all the time in terms of coming back to the breath, grounding yourself in awareness of this form, getting out of your head. But the Buddha was very explicit in speaking about mindfulness of the body in large part as actually this active contemplation of what the body actually is, as Asubha, um, not beautiful. And this is because we are deeply, tightly identified and dependent on this body in a way that we don't even realize. The delusion is so deep. And so to let go of our grip on the five khandhas and move towards awakening, towards a sense of freedom and non identification with any of the khandhas, with any of these things we take as me, mine, and myself, requires that we break through and see clearly the body for what it is. This is hard to talk about because in our culture, we understand our delusion about death. All of us realize that if we really knew we were going to die, we would change our lives. You know, culture's full of movies about people who discover they're terminally ill and they switch everything. Um, our delusion on the body is deeper than that because we don't even know we're deluded. I can't describe this completely, but it's a particular knowledge that if you have a calm mind, and this is how you contemplate the body, is you come to the deepest state of calm you're able to, and you remain there for as long as you're able to. And after a time, the mind will begin to move again inexorably. It's as if that cup of samadhi is full. And when that happens, all the Kruba Ajahns, all the great teachers I know of, tell people, if they're ready, to turn to use that movement of the mind to contemplate the body in a very active way, to use a Subha practice. And the afterglow of that calm means that the mind is strong and powerful, and it's happy enough in itself that it no longer needs to cling to the body so it can see clearly. When the mind is unhappy, when it doesn't have a refuge, it is unwilling to see the not self nature of the khandhas because the khandhas are all it has. It's, you know, it's like if you're you know, a very impoverished man may cling to every possession he has, but say someone who's, you know, this is an overly simplistic metaphor, but if you have some refuge, some wealth in the bank, then you're willing to give away things. Similarly, the mind and heart that have no internal happiness are unwilling to let go of the khandhas or see them clearly. So this afterglow of samadhi is essential for clear knowing, what we call bhavana mayapanya, knowledge through practice. So when the mind begins to move, you look and contemplate the body in the way that we did at the beginning of this meditation. It's a very active meditation, a very active process, and it takes a time to get a feel for it because there's no perfect arithmetic or formula for it. What I can say is if you begin to read the elder verses of the monks and nuns, if you begin to listen to the teachings of the Kruba Ajahns, you realize that so many of the enlightened beings, this was their key to the deathless. Often breaking through the khandha of the body, seeing it clearly, is equated with or is associated with stream entry, the first vision of enlightenment, because it's such a profound insight. So it's not something to be taken lightly. However, it has to be approached very carefully. And this is one of the reasons we don't talk about it all that often in non-monastic circles. Because first, if you're in a relationship, then you know you have to work within that realm, and uh, you know, well, yes, that's a whole nother discussion. If you're an aversive character, then this contemplation can make you quite angry and grumpy for days. It's a really powerful practice. And there's a story of the Buddha giving this practice of Asubha to a bunch of monastics. And when he returned later, they'd all committed suicide because they'd had such aversion arise in them towards the body. And in response to this occasion, he taught mindfulness of breathing to give them a sort of refuge of pleasurable meditation and using the body in a positive way. So it has a powerful potential for negative effect. So if you're an aversive character, if you find that after doing a Subha contemplation, you're angry the next day, you're grumpy, best perhaps to stop and to cultivate metta, breath meditation. But if you find that it cools the mind, if you're a greed character, getting this as a tool is really powerful because it rips apart the sense of self in a way that all these sort of highfalutin koans, which we Westerners so love, they sound so romantic. What was your face before you were born? And if you can see that clearly, that I'm sure is a profound insight. But looking and seeing through the body rips apart that sense of self in this nitty gritty way that's really profound. And it ameliorates every kilesa defilement that's intertwined with the body, which is many of them. So it's powerful to contemplate if you can do it. And basically, as you begin to move out of this place of samadhi and contemplate, you should notice a sense of cooling and brightening. It's as if the mind, which has this internal luminescence, think of what that beautiful thing of the heart, the mind, how it compromises itself when it really thinks it's this construct of clay, flesh, blood, pus. And now imagine that you give it a chance to let go, to see the body as just a veil, a mantle of clay, and just that much. And there's huge potential for compassion here because we judge people by their bodies so much. And if we can just see them as veils for the spirit, it's a huge gift to give people, whether they're attractive or unattractive in that sense of, the worldly sense. If it's just a body, and it's not cultivating a negative body image. A negative body image is comparing our bodies to other bodies. This Asubha is just seeing all bodies as just what they are, not terribly sexually attractive when you really look at it. So that's the preliminary. Use this with caution. If you do decide to try it, though, there's a few different routes. After the mind is rested and calm for a time, um, you it begins to move. And when it begins to move, apply it to this contemplation. The first is to run through the 32 parts of the body. It's a list I posted on to Discord, and you can also find uh, it's called A Bag of Bones under Access to Insight. If you Google those two things, you'll find a really great rundown of all these different lists. But the 32 parts of the body is one that the Buddha gave, and it runs through the body's parts: nails, teeth, skin, brain, pus, sinews, flesh, so on and so forth. And you go through these and wait until your mind becomes interested in one of them, because that means it's seeing something there. And then choose that as your object of contemplation and raise it up. The ones that tend to attract people the most are bones. Bones is very powerful. It's a really powerful contemplation. Blood often works, maybe less often for people. And then the 5 external objects that kind of shield our clear vision of the body. The nails, the first 5 objects monastics are given upon ordaining: hair of the head, hair of the body, nails, teeth, skin. So you raise one up and then contemplate. And this can take the form of a movie. Basically, you find a sort of movie that works for you internally in your head if you're visual, um, or a series of questions or contemplations. So for skin, you can do as we did in this beginning meditation. Uh, what is the skin really? Think about how it's constantly oozing all the time oil. What happens if you forget to wash it for a day? It's dirty. Um, think about the fact that it's dead tissue. Everything you see on the surface is dead. Um, And then you can, imagine kind of peeling it off. In monasteries, often there'll be a cremation ground and you'll get to watch a body burn. Um, and it really makes it seem like just a body. In Thailand, also at monasteries, often we'll get to go to autopsies to see these bodies cut open to sort of see through the khandhas. I've gone to three, I think. Um, One was a 5-day-old body that had begun to rot. That was especially powerful. And I'm a greed type character, so it's very powerful for me. It's very cooling. So, um, yeah, you can imagine peeling the skin off. If you find a video of an autopsy online, watch it after a calm meditation and wait until your mind catches on a scene. Often, there'll be a scene of like the skull getting split open, the face, and we have so much identity tied to the face and skull that usually in an autopsy, when those get broken, um, you'll notice a strong, like, there'll be a click. You'll see something. The mind will become very interested because it's seeing something it knows. It's seeing truth, and it's the first time it's seen it. And this is the most clear example of bhavana mayapanya, wisdom through practice, that practitioners get is coming out of a state of samadhi, looking at the body, and suddenly realizing that this arm is not you. It's a really strange sensation, but it's just, you realize it's just this, it's just flesh, bone, calcium, just like the stones. So yeah, you can watch an autopsy, find some photos of dead bodies. I know it's weird to say, don't, be careful with this practice, but it's powerful. Um, you can do the same with hair. What is hair? Look at a close up of it. Why is it that when you cut it off and drop it in a piece of soup, or sorry, a bowl of soup, the soup suddenly is unclean, even if it's your own hair? Something in you knows the dirty nature of this body. By that reaction, you can intuit it, but it's not seeing something clearly. Why is the hair fine on your head, and when it drops into the soup, it's not? Um, with the nails, it's just so much dead tissue. It continues to grow after you've died, for a few days. Uh, the bones are very powerful. So raising, you know, really feeling the bones, clicking your teeth, and understanding that sort of stone-like nature of them, um, contemplating a stone on the ground, and then the feeling of your bone in your arm and realizing it's just so much calcium. Imagining peeling off the skin and seeing the bones. And often, so for a visual character type, or someone who appreciates visualizations, these movies can be helpful. But often you'll find a phrase or a question which kind of clicks, and then you can use that as well. So often I'd use the term like bones, stone, and just realize the bones are just stones. That's all they are. There's no difference. It's just calcium, same as on the ground. Um, or say like, you are not this body, you are not this skin, or oozing. You know, it sounds strange, but honestly, we're counterbalancing a severe delusion. In the end, the noble beings don't see, the world is just the world, including the body. But we are so deluded by the body. We really do think it's beautiful and we attach to it. Um, and so we sort of have to counterbalance it with these, contemplations which seem a bit off putting. But if you can develop this in your tool belt, first of all, it will deepen your samadhi, because there just comes a time in retreat where your mind, it doesn't have any more samadhi in it. It's like it's reached, the cup is full. And this is a problem for practitioners who haven't been taught Asubha, because often what the mind wants is to contemplate truth. It's powerful, but it doesn't know where to go with that power, so it just vibrates and hums. So when that happens, if you have body contemplation, you have a task to apply it to, and it'll get interested. Often a week into a retreat, I just wouldn't be able to concentrate at all anymore, and the mind would feel wild, and I would be at an impasse until suddenly I remembered body contemplation and brought the idea of bones into my head or looked at some Asubha pictures, and the mind was, like, right there, extremely interested because that's what it wanted, it's what it needed, and so I did that for a few sessions, and then I could return to the samadhi, and it deepened from there. So it's the other foot, it's the vipassana foot after the samatha, the insight after the tranquility. And the other thing is just having the ability to step back from this rash of lust. Um, Lust can be really damaging and distracting. I think 62% of divorces recently cited porn addiction as the one of the main causes. I don't think we can underestimate the power that that sort of entertainment has, and causing infidelity, all these things. So to have the ability to cool those fires of lust, to have some way of just stepping back is such a useful tool, and it can help save your relationship. And it can help give you a measure of peace and coolness. And once again, it allows you to give this gift to people of not seeing them through by their body, but to see the body as just a veil for the heart. And then we stop judging people so much. It's a great gift to give them. So once again, that's Bag of Bones. If you want to Google it, it's a really good document of all these things. Use this with caution. But if you are serious about practice, it's worth trying out, especially if you're a greed type character. And understand that this is very, very it's talked about by all the Kruba Ajahns, the renowned teachers I know of in Thailand, as just a quintessential aspect of the practice. It's not taught much in the West, because people are averse to it. But if you're serious about this practice and have read the suttas, it's there. It definitely is there. So I want to open things up to a bit of questioning. Good luck. Please feel free to type in any questions you have or topics you'd like to discuss. It can be on Asubha or not. Ian saying that you can find autopsies on videos on YouTube. That's true. Don't get many discussions like this in Buddhist circles in the US, I feel. The bones are powerful. With bones, sometimes you don't even have to really bring to mind a complex contemplation. You can just bring to mind the vision of a skull or say skull. And it's such a powerful object. Sometimes that's actually enough. Daniel, is it bad to use Asubha contemplation on another's body? No, no, it's not. Um, I think the Buddha generally, he usually says this body is made of. I think often in the suttas it's portrayed as looking at one's own body, um, and dismantling that. I know that most teachers I've talked about say it's okay to use on the object of lust. Um, so, say there is sort of a person's body coming up again and again and again, someone you feel a lot of lust for, and monastics use this often. We aren't allowed, we're completely celibate, not just sexual relations with others, but completely. and that's a tall order. And monastics really keep this. People don't believe this all the time, but like if we falter and anything, we have to basically go into a period of exile somewhat, and then we have to be rehabilitated by a huge number of monks. It's really embarrassing. So, like, monastics keep this well, at least in my tradition, and Asubha is very helpful for that. So, a big part of that, yeah, is if someone's body continues to come into your mind, you look through it, you take off the skin, and honestly, when you take off the skin, men and women, um, look the same. It's just a skull, a blood smeared skull. Or you can think about sort of the stomach acid roiling around. You can think about what it looks like when people defecate. This is what bodies do. I mean, it's strange that you have to cringe when you say it, but it speaks to the level of our delusion and aversion to looking at things because it's just a body. This is what they do. Um, they bubble. It's interesting to be in a meditation hall. Often people who haven't been taught Asuba will get some glimpse of it by hearing the rumbling stomachs of people near them and the gurgling stomachs. And you kind of get the sense of like, yeah, there's sort of this roiling stomach acid in the person next to you. It's weird. So it's fine to use it on another person's body. Um, yeah. But if it starts bringing up aversion, that's a problem. It should make the mind cool and bright. I am participating in Ajahn Sona's online retreat. Are there any pitfalls we should try to avoid when we practice four elements or kasina meditations, especially when healing from trauma? I don't know completely how to answer that. I haven't worked with kasina meditation, and the four elements contemplations I've used mainly in the context of this looking at the body, like looking at the um, often it's taught in the West as sort of the hardness being earth, the liquidity being liquid, cohesion, the movement being air, the fire being heat. Um, but it is talked about in our tradition as very much like, watching the bones be stone, basically, the earth element decaying into earth. Um, so one should be careful in the same way around that one is around other Asubha practices in terms of seeing if it creates aversion towards the body. Kasina meditations, our teachers caution us a great deal on because this is where you hold an object of color in mind because it can lead to, especially a delusion character, getting really deluded. There's no groundedness. This is a fairly, there's reason to be wary of that. But I'd say Ajahn Sona is the one to ask in this one. If he's teaching a retreat on it, I'm sure this is a valid question for him. Um, But I do know I know of stories of a few monastics who have used especially the sun as a casina of light, and, they have become mentally unhinged from that. But that seemed to be a bit of an extreme example. So, and people do use casina meditation successfully. So, yes, ask Ajahn Sona. The 5 precepts, smiley face. So not so much a question, but the subject of the 5 precepts, is a good one. Um, I think perhaps the appropriate starting point is just to acknowledge that in the West, precepts and this sort of sila training rule aspect of the Buddhist path gets contextualized in an Judeo-Christian mindset as something you have to keep with or else you'll be punished. And, the Buddha really spoke of it in many ways, but one way was as a gift. Um, an aspect of dana, mahadana, great giving, because you're giving the gift of fearlessness to those around you. So not killing makes beings fearless of you. And it's interesting because we have this conceit in our culture around like the natural state is going out and hunting and, should be returned to. And people kind of romanticize that. Then you see a picture of Ajahn Chah and a deer coming up to him and nuzzling his hand completely unafraid. And you realize that that's the natural state of a being, of a human being, is complete goodwill, so that nothing has to be afraid of you. That's our natural state, not the hunter. Romanticize the being who a deer will approach without fear. That's who we should romanticize. And you keep the precepts as a gift to yourself, to others, and also as a foundation for practice, because the mind will actually become calm. Ajahn Lee said that morality is a metaphor for the concentrated mind. And as far as I know, it's just considered a prerequisite for deep practice and concentration to keep good morality. And you can really feel it when you break the precepts. Something in the heart becomes very weak and afraid and unable to remain calm. So it's a worthy goal to pursue, and I'd say a good basis for many practitioners. The one that gets people is often the fifth, um, refraining from intoxicants, because what's a glass of wine? But I would just say that, first of all, think of when you're a kid and your parent has a glass of beer. They change. Like, it as a kid, and I never liked it. I didn't like that change. My parents didn't drink much at all, but even one glass, you do notice in adults that you're around. Um, and you can also reflect on, like, in a Buddhist context, this aspect of sati or mindfulness is sacred. You've been wandering samsara for eons without this quality of self-reflection, so you treat it as sacred, and to compromise it by taking intoxicants at all is sort of not valuing it as the treasure it is. The other aspect is just seeing, even if you can handle one glass of wine, a lot of people can't stop at one glass. And you set an example. You know, if a kid grows up thinking that all adults drink, it's just what adults do, then they will drink. But if they have a few people in their lives who don't, it's an important landmark. And alcohol does so much damage. I mean, all, substances too, but just huge damage. And then also maybe you can have one glass now, but when things get bad, maybe you can't stop at one glass and things go south. So you don't even open that door. The final bit is there's just an aspect of surrender. There's sort of this bargaining mind with the precepts often, like, like, I don't really see the use of this one. I'll keep the other four. Um, there's a real shift in the heart when you're just like, okay, I surrender. The Buddha said to do five, I'll do five. And it's that aspect of surrender is worth giving up the wine, the aspect of complete giving up of self. There's a beautiful sutta where the Buddha says that he's admonishing some monastics for eating after noon, I think. And he says that a practitioner, if they don't relinquish their views around a minor precept, is like a partridge, I think, or pheasant with a vine tied around or a cord tied around its leg. Even if the precept is a small one, something small like, eating at the wrong time, although that would be a big deal in our tradition, but even a glass of wine or something, then it can bind the partridge and keep them from progressing. Whereas if one is willing to keep this training and he says they show disrespect for the teacher. Um, Whereas if one is willing to keep the training, even these small precepts, they're like an elephant with a thin rotted vine around their hoof, and they can just break away from Mara and defilement and walk towards awakening. So it's interesting how these small points can be real sticking points. All that being said, it's not the end of the world if you have a glass of wine. It really isn't. And some people are not going to take on the full five. Um, just to say that these are some of the reasoning around that fifth one, I think. And I am wary of that, people being too strict on them, people beating themselves up because they're not able to hold things perfectly. We encourage these precepts. They're helpful in meditation. Um, it's not the end of the world if you aren't able to keep them absolutely perfectly. But if you do want to, find a group of practitioners who help and are keeping the same ones, and it will help support you. One helpful thing is to find a spiritual friend and tell them that, give them a check written to the political party you dislike, and tell them that if you break something, if you have the cigarette, whatever, to mail the check, and that will keep you in line. Okay. So that's our evening. And I hope it wasn't too off putting. We hit two of the hot topics in Western Buddhism, Asubha and fifth precept. So take it, in stride. We have our Zoom session now. So 6:45 to 7:30. Those who want to join Zoom can. I'll post the link in the chat. And you can also find it halfway down the page on clearmountainmonastery.org. And see you all soon. Be well.